Away we go. It's another edition of Weather for Weather Geeks. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about this evening, so let's not waste any time on this Monday evening. Let's get right to it. Meteorologist Andrew DiPaolo did a nice story this evening on the 6 o'clock newscast about how rain is impacting crops and farmers as we've gotten into the spring and summer seasons. It has been a wetter than average 2018 so far. Now, this takes us back to the beginning of the calendar year, almost 9 inches above average in terms of total precipitation here locally. Notice how that stands in contrast to some of the lower numbers. Akron, Cleveland, Erie, all above average, but not as far above average as us. Wheeling is another spot that has seen quite a bit more precipitation than average so far in the calendar year 2018. Well, what about the growing season, defined as the beginning or the day in which we record the last 32-degree temperature? The growing season officially began April 30th this year, and since that date, at the Youngstown Warren Airport in Vienna, 9.65 inches of rain has fallen. That's above the average of 7.78 inches from April 30th through June 25th. So, and that's just at the airport. Now, some parts of Columbiana County have had quite a bit more rain than this, probably over a foot worth of rain in some localized areas in Columbiana County since the beginning of the growing season. So that has had an impact on some of the crops this year. Thankfully, we're going to head into, well, it's going to be very hot, a drier pattern as we head towards the weekend. Much more on the heat coming up in just a second. Pretty cool looking sky this afternoon and this evening with a few different types of clouds moving in a few different directions. Some lower level cumulus clouds moving in that direction. Some high thin cirrus clouds up in the upper levels of the atmosphere moving from northwest southeast. No rain to contend with locally this evening, and we'll stay dry into tonight. Severe weather risk continues down in parts of the southeast this evening, including parts of the Carolinas. Also a tornado watch out for parts of Iowa with low pressure spinning across the plain states. Now, if we get these high clouds out of the way, should be a nice show in the sky this evening. This has been up there, a nice show for a few evenings, but we've had some cloud issues, especially Saturday night. But the moon and Jupiter are fairly close together still in the southeast sky. Then if you pan over to the west sky just after sunset, you'll see very bright Venus over there as well. Venus sets a little earlier than the moon and Jupiter, so head out not long after sunset to catch Venus in the western sky. All right, here's our big picture for your Tuesday. 81 is what we're aiming for, pretty close to average, which is 80 on the 26th day of the year. 15 hours and 7 minutes worth of daylight by some calculations. Our in-house system here wants to call the sunset 9 o'clock. It depends on what, it kind of depends on what source you look at. Our sunset's either at 8:59 or 9, depending on what source you're looking at. So no matter which way you slice it, the days are still very, very long, even though now that we're a few days past the solstice, we're losing a little bit of daylight each day. It's a matter of seconds at this point. It'll become a matter of minutes before you know it, but right now it's just a matter of a handful of seconds per day we're losing. All right, it's going to be a nice Tuesday. Mix of sun and clouds for tomorrow. Clouds will try to thicken as we head towards the evening. I can't rule out a sprinkle towards the end of the day, but it's a real low chance. If you're heading to the Scrappers game or doing anything else, you should be just fine. Wednesday, though, is an interesting weather day. We've got a sorry excuse for a cold front heading our way. There's no cold air with this front, but there is a wind shift associated with it. The air behind it is a little bit drier, so this isn't a huge clash of the air masses, but nonetheless, with an increasingly soupy air mass in place in a front heading in, some thunderstorms will likely develop in waves on Wednesday. We could see one round in the morning and another mid to late afternoon. Some of these could be a little feisty. Then in the wake of the front, clouds should break for some sunshine Thursday, and then the story becomes, of course, the heat. Well, right now the Storm Prediction Center does have our area outlined in a low-end risk for severe weather coming up on Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a slight risk area somewhere, maybe in here, with the overnight update coming up for Wednesday. So we'll keep an eye on that. But it's a day when we may have to be weather aware in the afternoon with the possibility of some damaging wind gusts, a small chance for hail. I doubt there's any enormous damaging hail or anything like that. And the tornado risk looks pretty low overall. There is some turning of the wind with height through the atmosphere on Wednesday, but I'm not real impressed with the overall dynamics of this system. It's not the most dynamic situation in the world, just pretty unstable. It's going to be a warm and humid air mass on Wednesday, so our instability will be certainly high enough to get those updrafts going and get some storms pretty tall in the sky. So again, we'll keep an eye on the situation for Wednesday. I'll have a full update on that coming up on Tuesday on Weather for Weather Geeks. Rainfall amounts, as usual in the warm weather season with the scattered nature of thunderstorms, your mileage can vary with rainfall totals. Some places can get nothing. Some places could see more than an inch. As far as an average, right now our models are showing half an inch to an inch as an average. But, you know, averages at this time of the year can be real deceiving because you can have some pretty big variations. All right, let's talk about the heat. This is going to be a big story. I'm pretty confident that we're going to see our hottest weather since 2012 coming up this weekend. We only have to break 92 to have the warmest weather we've had since July of 2012. So the next few days relatively comfortable, but then Friday we jump up to 89 and then 93 Saturday. I've got 95 in the forecast for Sunday. What about records? Here's what the records look like. Now the record Friday is out of reach. The record Monday is out of reach, but the records are within reach. Saturday and Sunday, the record Saturday 94, record Sunday 96. Notice how old these records are. A lot of our records at this time of the year are old records, dating back to the very hot decade in the 1930s. The early 40s were pretty hot as well. So at this time of the year, a lot of our records date back to these years. Some of our records in June particularly date back to 1988. But during very late June and into July, a lot of our records are from the 30s and 40s. So you know heat index values are going to be impressive over the weekend. Sunday, probably the worst of the heat, combined with the humidity. I wouldn't be surprised if we had some 100-degree heat index values across the region. This is just one model showing, you know, the heat. I don't think there's going to be many clouds. It's going to be intense, oppressive sunshine coming our way over the weekend. So it's going to be one of those situations where people sensitive to the heat, those without air conditioning, the old, the young, those who are just, you know, sensitive to this kind of thing, that can't just roll with the punches as easily as middle-aged people or teenagers. You got to, you know, keep an eye on them. Of course, it's going to be a situation over the weekend where, you know, we want to avoid the cliches and talk, and, you know, I'm tempted to not say, make sure you're keeping water out for the dogs and make sure you don't leave your kid in the back seat of the car. And to me, that just sounds so duh, and it's a no-brainer, but it still happens. And so we still have to go on TV and remind people, don't leave your car or your child in the back seat. And if your dog is outside all day, make sure that dog has shade and plenty of water. So those are things you're going to hear us talking about later this week. We can't avoid talking about it because people still do it. The longer range still looks pretty warm. Now the heat will probably relax some next week around the 4th of July. I don't think it's going to be a cool 4th. It probably is very warm, but it probably won't be in the mid-90s. But overall, the 8 to 14 day outlook still looks toasty. So this heat has some legs. So tonight's lows in the 50s. This could be the last time we have lows in the 50s for a while. It could be at least a couple of weeks. So maybe open up those windows one last time. If you have air conditioning, it's going to be busy as we go towards the end of this week, this weekend, and beyond. That's it for Monday night's weather for Weather Geeks. I'll see you back here Tuesday evening. Thanks as always for watching.